Thank you for doing double duty today. I know you spoke earlier today.
I feel like I'm the most boring person on this list, so I'm sorry, everyone.
Well, I mean,
try and be interesting.
This is a sophisticated crowd, so most people probably know of Tubi TV, but maybe they don't know how, and I was surprised by just how popular it is. So I just said 81 million active viewers a month. I mean, that puts it larger than Paramount Plus, Hulu, Peacock. I guess, talk about, other than, I mean, it's free, right? But what need, what demand is it satisfying in the marketplace that maybe some of these other so-called higher profile streamers aren't meeting?
Yeah, so I joined Tubi as CEO over a year ago. I'd spent nearly a decade before that at Vimeo, the online video platform. And I, too, was surprised, I think, at the incredible momentum that Tubi has seen. And we are now the most watched free TV service in America. And I think some of that is a steady, consistent commitment that Tubi's had for over 10 years. It was started by its founder to free access to the world's largest collection of movies and TV shows. And then some of that is that we are in an era where I think viewers are frustrated and they're looking for a streamer that puts them back at the center. And what we see at Tubi is that we've gotten really good at removing barriers, making it super easy and frictionless to just start watching content without having to pay, without having to take a bunch of steps. And we've also done a good job, I think, of listening to what our fans want, listening to what's happening in culture, and just working really, really hard and diligently to bring people more and more of the stories that they're interested in and that they can't find anywhere else. And it sounds really table stakes, Brad, but it really is just that, and doing it every single day and just not wavering no matter what else is happening in this very kind of intensely competitive market that I think is what is leading to Tubi's momentum.
Well, you mentioned a competitive market, and there are other ad-supported video-on-demand networks. Pluto is owned by Viacom and Paramount, Xumo, Comcast and Charter, Freevee, Amazon. I mean, first of all, who ordained that all of these should be two-syllable names?
That I can't tell you.
Yeah, but also, how do you feel like Tubi has been able to differentiate itself in what is, by any measure, a pretty crowded market?
Well, first I'll say we define our competitive set, I think, much more broadly. We really think of it as we want to be the entertainment destination of choice for this next generation. And we look a lot at cord cutters, cord nevers, and sort of the younger audiences that are coming online. And our perspective is like we don't think of it as we're competing against this player that has this model. We think of it as we're in an attention economy. And ultimately, people are choosing to spend more of their time on social and gaming in some cases than television. And so it's our job to just raise the bar for what free entertainment looks like. And that's how we have kind of thought about our offering and our value proposition. And so the way I think about it is like, yes, I think you're seeing the tailwinds kind of moving in favor of free ad-supported television. I do think that is something that we will continue to see. But I think that's because the next best alternative for people to spend their time is sometimes just opening up their phone and going on TikTok. And so if we don't find a way to make the offering feel as delightful and easy as that, we will lose in the long term. And so that, I think, is really, really what we've been doing, and I think it's working.
So I mentioned some of your direct rivals, but recently we've seen Amazon get, introduce an ad-supported tier, Netflix. So I guess what is happening to the market? What happens to ad rates, maybe in particular, as more and more of the streaming inventory comes online?
So I think on the consumer side, there are absolutely more players that are offering ad tiers. Many of them, though, those are ad tiers once you pay. So to be clear, that's asking consumers to pay to watch ads. My perspective, that's very different than being entirely free.
So is there just frustration that is fueling this? People are sick of all the bills, of paying more than they did in the previous regime?
I mean, I think that is a factor. When I look at Tubi's audience, over 65% are cord cutters and cord nevers. We see the fastest growth among younger multicultural audiences. And in general, very strong engagement among Gen Z and millennials. And so I suspect it's a bit of both. And then your question on the ad side, I think there's definitely more competition for ad inventory, for sure. We are seeing that pressure. I think everyone saw in the upfront market real pressure on ad rates and CPMs. In Tubi's case, we didn't experience that. We actually had a really strong, or strongest upfront, and really had nice acceleration and double-digit growth. But I think in our case, it is because we were always sort of priced, I'd say, appropriately for this current environment. And, you know, we never invested in, we didn't have the Netflix strategy of like big budget originals, which would historically commanded those higher CPMs. So we've been, I think, more protected, I think, from some of these dynamics. It doesn't mean it's not a very competitive market. But again, I think the key to winning in the market is like, keep the viewer front and center and continue to be the most engaging place for them.
Well, I want to ask you about originals, but first, as I was preparing, I looked at Tubi and I looked at some of the most watched lists, and some of them really jumped out at me, like the Partridge Family. That is not a show that I have contemplated in many years. Columbo is on the list. You know, don't sleep on Peter Falk. And talk about ones to watch.
Fun fact: Columbo is watched. You might think it's like the older generation. We have got a ton of like young Gen Z audienses that are watching this content.
How do you account for this?
We say it's not nostalgia, it's newstalgia. And by the way, that's obviously not all we have on Tubi. We have hundreds of originals that we go out and produce that we think are very reflective of culture today. And 1 in 4. Another one was
TMZ 3-part investigation into UFOs.
There you go.
I've not watched that one yet.
Well, I think, you know, to that point, I think what we're seeing is, so we started with this huge library, and then we don't presume to know what is good. The premise for Tubi is we are not the arbiters of quality. We let our audience tell us. And what we find is that they surprise us. And if we had approached it as looking at, okay, we're going to program for a gender or a demo or a very monolithic kind of sense of an audience, we would miss these opportunities. And so what I see is more that I think when we look at audience tastes and preferences and culture, it's just way more multidimensional. It's moving fast. It's moving at the speed of TikTok. And we benefit because we have such a long tail of different kind of content that we can pick up these things, these hidden gems that you might not realize are popular or people are interested in. And, you know, what our fans tell us is that's what they love about Tubi. It feels different. It feels like one of the things we hear is that people feel seen, weirdly, on Tubi because of the content. And we're leaning into that.
So let's talk about the original strategy. So 300 titles, is it throughout the life of the service, or
over the last couple of years?
Yeah, okay.
We embarked on originals about 2 years.
So what is, you know, there's a surplus of content, some might say, out there. What audiences are you pursuing? What's your strategy?
Yeah. So as I said, we don't think of it as here's a genre or an audience we want to go after, but we do think of it as what are we seeing that is bubbling up among the fandoms on Tubi, where it's clear that they want more of something, and for some reason they aren't able to get that through, you know, or we aren't able to get that through the traditional kind of ecosystem. And so you'll see us do a whole variety of things.
Can you give us a few examples?
Yeah, sure. So this week we announced a talk show with Deion Sanders, Coach Prime. It's more about culture and sports culture. We have a generational comedy called The Z-Suite that's being filmed right now, starring Lauren Graham, and it's sort of a Madison Avenue advertising agency that gets taken over by Gen Z. What could go wrong? And you'll also see things that you just might not expect. A great example, and this is an example of us kind of listening in terms of what's happening in social. So there's a fandom called the Earpers, and that they're fans of a sci-fi show that was canceled called Winona Earp. It's like a Canadian kind of thriller Western. And our team noticed that those fans were really, really passionate about bringing that show back. And so we brought it back. And it's an example where, you know, we dropped the trailer and we had 600 million views on social in 24 hours. And that fandom has come back over and over and over. And so that's why I say, you know, for us, it's not about trying to find one show that's going to speak to everyone. It's about recognizing that what Tubi does well is we help stories find their audience. And we want to keep doing that over and over and over and over. And that's how we think about our originals.
Films as well?
Yes. In fact, one of the interesting things is there's a Variety Illuminate, they do the top 10 movies of the week charts. And I think we had a Tubi original movie 4 times in the last quarter make those charts, and they're titles you might not have heard of, right? Like Bloodline Killer, Robin, The Assistant 2. These are examples of content where we're working with sometimes independent, homegrown creators. It's stories that aren't going to be in the box office, but they absolutely resonate on our platform.
Well, speaking of the box office, would you ever consider bringing a Tubi original into theaters?
We actually have something right now. It's a movie with Peter Dinklage and Juliette Lewis called The Thicket. It's our first attempt. It's a passion project of Peter's, and it's really great. It's getting some really good reviews, so hopefully many of you will get a chance to check it out for free on Tubi in the coming future.
You mentioned Vimeo. So you joined Tubi from Vimeo a year ago. Vimeo, part of the IAC constellation of companies, but publicly listed. Tubi, part of Fox. Just talk about the transition, being one of the few remaining content assets inside Fox, and why you decided to join Tubi.
Yeah. So I had a wonderful experience at Vimeo. I was there for 9 years. I was CEO for 6, and we were public for 2. And I really felt like that was a platform that put creators first. We spent all of our time thinking about how to lower the barriers for creators to be able to make and distribute and monetize their content. And one of the things that I experienced as probably the biggest barrier to supporting creators, it wasn't the technology, though there was plenty of opportunity there. It was the distribution. It's getting creators an audience. And the reason that I came to Tubi was I really felt that the approach, the fact that the business was it's a pure business model. It's 100% free and ad supported. That means that we live and die by viewer engagement. We only make money if someone is watching and engaging on our service. And there's a purity of that aligns incentives that I felt like would be a really exciting foundation to hopefully disrupt a little bit in streaming and to help kind of unify creators and audiences in a way that I think has long been needed. So for me, it's been a really incredible year to see sort of some of that hypothesis start to take shape. And we have a lot of work to do, and we're very dialed in on the Tubi team. But I am optimistic.
A question that is probably of great interest to your bosses is Tubi profitable?
We see a very clear path to profitability. But in Tubi's case, I'll say, first, we did not have a content strategy that involved huge swings and huge bets where you're spending millions and millions of dollars on very premium original content, which that's often the hardest part to getting to profitability. The other part in our case is we have built up a very highly engaged audience, and we see very clearly our path to profitability shouldn't come from cutting costs. And in fact, we are not cutting costs. We are investing more. We are growing our investment in stories and content. And our belief is that we just have to get more and more efficient at monetizing our audience by building relationships with advertisers. And again, we had a good upfront. So I feel like the path for us is really just growing in a more scalable and efficient way. And that's ultimately a much more sustainable way to be profitable in the long term versus having to cut costs that erode your value proposition for viewers.
How do you think Fox views Tubi strategically? Like, is there potential for some kind of combination or partnership with Fox News? Do you think that they look at introducing a subscriber tier to Tubi?
I think that right now the value that Tubi brings is it's meaningful. We're really a way to expand the pie. As I mentioned, our audience is largely incremental, so 65% cord cutters and nevers. If you think about it, Fox has a really strong stable of assets, but it's a very different audience. And so Tubi offers this opportunity to really reach this cordless generation. And everything that we have seen on the team and that I see as my mandate, it really is to build the #1 streamer and to just very much focus on being the absolute best at delighting audiences. And I think that is strategic.
So 2 quick questions before we run out of time. We've talked a little bit today about the disintegration of regional sports networks. Do you think Tubi has a role to play in broadcasting live sports or news?
So we do feature a lot of live sports linear channels where you can access things like WNBA games on Tubi. We have decided against investing in premium live sports rights, primarily because those rights are very expensive, and they don't really make sense on a pure ad-supported model. So what you're going to see Tubi do more of is we'll look to very strategically, in partnership with Fox Sports, play a role in more of the sports culture, the stories around athletes, the stories around leagues. That Deion Sanders talk show I mentioned is one thing you'll see from us. I think for the Super Bowl, you'll see us do a purple carpet. It's a pregame show that's not about the sports. It's going to be about the fashion and the culture and then sort of the celebrity vibes around the game. And so you'll see us experiment there. What we hear from younger audiences, particularly Gen Z, is that they're very interested in the stories around sports. I think we saw it a little bit at the Olympics too. So we're kind of making a bet that that's the place where Tubi can add value.
Okay, but in terms of picking up, say, a Midwestern baseball team's regional broadcast, as a lot have lost their partners.
We've been thinking about it, yeah. I mean, I never say never in a market like this, but right now I think we're much more interested in on-demand movies, TV shows. That's where we see sort of our strength. And so we'll see how the rest unfolds.
Okay, last question. So many SVOD players, AVOD players. You still have linear TV declining, but still a sizable audience. What does the future look like? How much consolidation do you anticipate?
I mean, I think there will be some consolidation, and certainly there are some challenges ahead. But I see more opportunity than challenge. And as I said, I think the addressable market for us is actually really big because it is the attention economy. And yes, that's a competitive space, but there's still room for disruption. And I'm really excited about the opportunity to bring more diversity in storytelling, more unique stories from more unique storytellers. I think we're at a place right now in the industry where the time has come where we can do things like that. And Tubi is experimenting here. We just launched the first fan-fueled studio in streaming, where we actually have people, putting out their projects, and we'll greenlight them based on fan feedback. Issa Rae's partnering with us on that. And there's just so much there to still be kind of figured out. So I'm optimistic. I think you're going to see overall the viewer experience is going to become the key differentiator, and I think that's ultimately a good thing.
All right. Well, Anjali, I'm going to go catch up on my Columbo.
Check out Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
I watched it in its time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.